replay. Hello, happy November. Welcome to a month that feels completely full of possibility, but also a lot of um, perhaps turbulence at the very beginning. And there's going to be a lot of really interesting things transpiring internally and externally in this month of November. I'm Aurora Light. I'm so excited to be here with my soul sisters, the Radiant Evolution Collective, Nina Infinity, and Radiant Soul Nicole. And I just dropped my November energy interpretation, where I take a sort of snapshot energetically about what is coming and also how we as conscious creators can best prepare for what is to come. So the themes that really came up were judgment, and moving that towards understanding. So we're going to do some deep dives into that because we've all had a lot of experiences that can really support our understanding of how things are happening for us instead of to us. And we're going to be talking about how that can bring us into alignment with who we really are, and so that we can create from that place instead of feeling like all of the pieces are kind of scattered all over the place. So welcome, ladies. What does this energy of November feel like for you as you're just tapping into it this month?
So this month is, it already feels strange and we're only a couple hours in. I think that could be maybe the post Halloween hangover and all of that. But uh, what's already come through, because I was listening to your on point energy update that you released already, and then is another one from Amanda Ellis, who I follow, and both of you talked about wonder, and I was like, well, that's important because, and by the way, I heard you talk about it first and you recorded yours first, so you were already tuned into that. um, but you were both talking about wonder and how it's so important to have that to be in that state of wonder and open to possibilities, because if we're stuck in this place where we're in this box, then we're not going to be able to change and shift into the things that we want to see. And the first time I heard you talk about it, I'm like, okay, that's cool, be in wonder, yeah, yeah. And then I heard it again and I was like, oh, what am I not I think you were both kind of talking about how there is so much possibility for change, and there was like this box that I was keeping my mind in, that things couldn't change, kind of. I'm not even exactly sure, but it's like all of a sudden it just removed that box for me anyways. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna be like, what can we create this month, like as humanity? How fast can we go, and how can we use this energy to really shift? Because it feels like we've been on this like ascension journey for so long, and like we've been riding this roller coaster for so long, and when is it going to be like, I mean, there's not a final destination point that we're actually going to get to, but like, when are we going to be done the craziness? When is it going to like level out a little bit? I don't know. And I feel just sometimes I kind of get into this space where I'm like, it's just going to be like this forever, and I'm like, it's just going to keep being difficult, and almost like I'm not expecting things to get better because the last couple of years have been so hard, although I do believe things will get better. But anyway, so it's like it just opened up a new level of expansion and awareness, and um, that's what I'm feeling into this month, and allowing my as within so without experience, so what I'm focusing on, to be beauty and aesthetics, so that I can create more of that in the world and show up in the world as my radiant self. And these are some of the cards that I pulled for myself this month too, from the new Elemental Forces of Creation Oracle deck that we just got printed and produced. So let's breathe all that in, because that was a lot.
Nina, before I ask you, I have to reply to one or two things. First off, sometimes it takes hearing something more than once for it to really sink in and land. So I don't listen to anybody else's energy interpretations or updates before I do my own, because I want mine to be coming through, like fresh and from myself. So I love that wonder is what we both tapped into, Amanda Ellis and I. But also, I'm curious if you can just test for yourself right now if that thought that things can't get any better is actually yours. Yeah. right? Because you're saying, I don't even believe that,
It's like a
right?
grid that I was plugged into, information that I was plugged into, like collective beliefs that I was plugged into.
Because that's the prevailing narrative. It's what they want you to believe, right? Climate emergency and doom and everything is going to hell. But there's also another experience that people that do have future vision and forecasting and the ability to like feel into future timelines or maybe remember them because you're from there, like what we are actually walking into is so freaking beautiful. And I know that that is not the narrative that is pushed, so we can really easily have those intrusive thoughts of the collective going, it's never going to get any better. It's always going to just continue to suck. And we're on this cycle towards the apocalypse, which people don't actually understand means just the lifting of the veil. So, yeah, just this has been coming up so much and so much for everybody is, are these thoughts that you're thinking yours? Are these belief systems yours, or are they from the collective unconscious, the collective consciousness, your ancestors, your parents, right? Like, do you actually believe that at the soul level? Because so many times the answer is no, especially for the people that are conscious creators that are watching this right now. Let us know if you guys have been butting up more against other people's beliefs, like cramming their way into your field right now in a more insidious way. Nina, how's like obviously anything you want to reply to that conversation with, and then tell us about what November feels like to you.
So I do a practice every month where I print out like a whole calendar month, and then I write down my movement each day just to sort of see what I've done. I actually recently started to write down my self-care in there too. So at the end of the month, I can see all of the things that I've done for myself, even if sometimes some days it feels like I may have not. And so I started a new day or a new sheet today for November, and it just felt like this fresh, open possibility, expansion, excitement for what is coming, for what's blossoming. And October was challenging for me. There was a lot that came up for me to go deep into and to heal and to feel. I felt a lot of different emotions this month, especially anger and frustration, which I don't normally feel. And some of that anger and frustration was for no reason at all. And I was just feeling it. And that was an opportunity to check in. Was that mine? And Aurora and Nicole, I'm always so grateful that you can be a reminder to, reflect that to me, that question to me, if it's mine. So yeah, it feels like October was heavy, but I'm grateful for the learning. I'm grateful for the transformation. And I'm grateful that I feel like there's almost like, I'm getting this doorway vibe. Like there's like this new stepping through this new doorway. And I'm, yeah, just feeling really, feeling that wonder. Yeah, and open to possibility.
So you're not the only person that's also feeling that. I was, scrolling through a little bit of TikTok while I was watching my breakfast, and there was a few people going like, do you guys feel like something big is going to happen? Or do you feel like something shifted? And I was speaking with my one-on-one clients this morning, and there were several of them that were like, the energy feels different. It just feels like this big realm is opening. There's something new that's available to us. So that's exciting. What are we going to explore? But what really came through for me is that people are going to have two experiences of this giant open chasm, right? Some people are going to go, oh my gosh, all of this freedom to explore. Let's go. Let's play. Let's go see what's possible. And then other people are going to go, oh my gosh, there's no ground cover. I'm so exposed. I don't know where to go. There's too many options, and they're going to fly into overwhelm, right? So we might be processing this energy very differently depending on how our nervous systems are doing, how much unresolved trauma we have from the pandemic or from our previous experiences, our ancestors, all of that, right? It's going to also depend on the lens through which you are seeing the world. And that really brings me to kind of what I saw on a slider or a spectrum for November, which is people and experiences that we'll have where we are in judgment. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there is understanding. And I feel like many, many people are going to be stuck in judgment of the situation, the place, the people around them. And really what that amounts to is being really stuck in the human and not seeing beyond right where we're at, right? Not being able to zoom out to a place like where the eagle would fly, right? That visionary perspective of where we might be headed, right? A lot of people aren't able to do that. That's something that some of us are gifted with, but it's also a vibrational frequency thing. When we're hanging out in fear, trauma, grief, sorrow, anger, all of the feelings that make us feel like crunchy and small, we literally can't lift up our vision to the perspective where we have access to our intuition and foresight and all of that too. So there's a couple things that are happening at once. We're going to be also having a lot of people who have that visionary capacity be like fall into the judgment and go like and have explosive moments. And that happens. Like me and Nicole and Nina all experienced it this weekend quite a bit. Thank you, solar flares. But we'll be able then to go from that place and go, this doesn't feel good. What do I want instead? And then you take a breath and you go, okay, I would like to be in a state of understanding as opposed to judgment, because they can't hold both of those frequencies at the same time. And I think the shortest way to sum up that frequency of understanding is one that is compassionate to self and others, but it also comes at the life is happening for you as opposed to you, at you, and you're a victim, right? So let me know your thoughts on that, ladies.
The image that was coming up for me is like tunnel vision, when we're just so hyper focused on, oftentimes what other people are doing rather than looking at ourselves or looking at how we can make changes and shifts in our own life or in our perspective, or clear out old junk and trauma and energy that is like the heavy dense energy. Rather than focusing on all of that that's within our realm, we have this opportunity to, we can do that, or we can choose to look at other people in judgment and thinking like, oh, they're not doing this, they're doing this wrong, they're doing that wrong. Whereas in fact, that they're acting as mirrors for us. So oftentimes when we're looking at, I'll share a personal experience that I had in the last week. I had a professional session where a practitioner I felt the session that I had was very focused on them sharing a lot about their own stuff and how different practices had helped them. And I felt like the whole session was kind of like rushed and incongruent, and kind of like the energy was just very erratic. And I went out of there feeling so angry and feeling like I should have interjected more and advocated for myself and claimed like assertively this, this is what I'd like to get out of the session. And so over a week, I parsed through a lot of these emotions. I felt this anger. I allowed myself to feel it. I shook my body. I banged the crap out of my drum. I seeked wise counsel with my beautiful friends, Nicole and Aurora. And through talking it out, I was actually able to see that this person was mirroring a lot of different things for me. They were mirroring things for me, and also illuminating places where I judged myself, and also places where it's like they were being an example of how I would prefer not to be in a professional setting when I'm working with clients. And in the end, I went to my session again today, and they rectified everything. It was as if I walked in and they said, I want to focus on you. What are your goals? And I was like, huh, that's what I wish that they would have asked a week ago. But it was this shift in that, wow, I did some of that work for myself. I did that work in myself, on myself. I shifted what was going on here, and then that rearranged the particles in the universe. It was quite amazing, because it's kind of like that quote, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at expand. Or as Nicole was sharing, or not expand, they change. When Nicole was sharing the as above, the as within, so without, it's like, as we make this shift and change, literally our experiences out in the world can illuminate that. There's the card, so beautiful. As within, so without. And so these opportunities, these experiences are acting as mirrors for us. Is it something that we judge within ourselves? Is it potential that we hold? Or is it something that is showing us a mirror of who we are and how we are in the world, so that we can see that? I mean, any potential success or amazing thing that we see in another is just showing us what's possible. And so there's so much there around, for me, shifting what I was judging and what I was frustrated about and what I was irritated about, towards, what am I learning from this? How is this happening for me? What's the gold within this? I was learning that I wanted to, in certain situations, I had space to really expand in being more assertive, and to use my voice and to advocate for myself. And there's so many other little pearls of wisdom that came out of this experience that really helped me to feel grateful for the way that everything went down, even though it was uncomfortable and crunchy in the moments where I was feeling frustrated and irritated and angry. But those moments, when life gives us these opportunities to practice, those moments are when we really are like, oh yeah, we pull out our tools and we use what we have in our arsenal or in our toolbox. And I like what Manifestation Babe says about the universe giving us opportunities to practice, rather than thinking about it as like the universe is testing us. Because if the universe is like our divine parent, or like, beautiful creator that's like in support for us, is like a parent really going to be testing their kids? I think it's more like they're going to be helping them practice and giving them loving opportunities to grow and to learn and to expand. And so that's kind of what I've been navigating, and just having this perspective shift internally and seeing how it manifested externally. And I was in quite awe and gratitude that it found its completion in this way.
Can I just say, like, were you perhaps in a state of wonder as well, of like, ooh, because that was the other thing that came through in the energy interpretation for November. Do go and watch that if you haven't already, because there was a lot of context that you might want. But wonder was almost the thing that we get to have as the prize when we move from judgment into understanding. What do you think, Nicole?
Like, as you were speaking and you shared this before we popped on here today, I was like, wow, that's so freaking incredible. Like, when we get to be in this state of excitement and wonder and awe with like how divinely perfect things work out, and how when we get stuck in these stories, that's so limiting, because if we're telling ourselves this story, we're not open to anything else being true but that. But why would we want to limit ourselves to that? Well, we don't do it on purpose, most of us. And we get that mirror and that reflection back, then we can we get that choice to do something different, to see things differently. And then the universe works in like miraculous ways, where things just naturally like resolve themselves so quickly and seemingly, because that person doesn't need to play that triggering role in your life anymore, and you've done your work. So if you're wanting to progress, don't want to say quicker, but more easily and with more grace, being in that state of wonder and openness is such a powerful place to be, and such a powerful choice for you to make for yourself, so that things can, you can, things keep coming at you and you can just, take them and roll with the punches, as they say. And it just makes everything so much easier. And I really want to speak to, because the reading that I did for myself seems so potent and perfect for this whole conversation and this topic this month. So I already showed the as within, so without. So I was really experiencing I felt a lot of heaviness in my body, and like I wasn't feeling as much joy as I normally do. And I kept getting lots of messages to have more fun and have more joy, but there was just a lot weighing me down. And so I was like, okay, what does this card mean? This card means to like look with it. What am I thinking right now? What am I creating for myself? Because we're such powerful creators. We're creating like in the moment. So I was having these looping thoughts all the time. And then I was starting to see that and feel it. And then like, yeah, it just was like kind of yucky. I got the feeling guidance card for water. And this card was like, okay, go within, feel what's in your body. And I actually made a list of what I was experiencing in my body, the physical sensations. And you can also do this with the emotions that you're feeling as well. But I was like feeling dense and heavy and stuck and tight. And so I wrote all those words on one column. And then I crossed them out and I wrote what I'd rather feel instead. And because of that, and Aurora's smiling because she's like, I know that. She shared that with me many times. And it's so powerful and helpful. And that just even recognizing that, and just it made space for so much more to shift. And that is exactly what the Earth card was telling me to do, was to focus on beauty and aesthetics and look at what I want to create, what I'd rather have instead. Look at the beauty, because where we put our intention, that's where the energy goes. And we don't intentionally do this by usually on purpose by looking at the crappy stuff around us. But if we do focus on that, that's what we see more of. So it's like this feedback loop that's happening. So I'm choosing now to consciously focus on those things that I wanted to feel. So when I crossed out all those words, how I was feeling, I ended up with open and flowing and soft and I can't remember. Those words repeated a lot though throughout the different things. And I also have not been meditating regularly as much, and I got the card meditation and prayer as well. And so this is like, how do I do all this? Go into meditation and prayer, come into that stillness and really make that space for a clear mind where I am disconnected from social media and all the noise and all the stuff that's happening out in the world. Because also this time of month, or this time of the year, I'm really feeling like it's a really potent energy for downloads and information to come in if we make the space to receive all of that. And I really love the prayer aspect of this too, because meditation is great, but prayer is like the opposite of worry, I think. And we're just putting our intentions into creating something more beautiful than what already exists, which comes back to the beauty card. And then the last card that I pulled for myself is the fire element radiant self card. So when I do all of this that I just talked about, I get to be my radiant self and shine my light out into the world. And it's just such a beautiful reading for what could happen for anybody that's watching right now for this month. If you're stay open to the wonder and possibility of it all.
I'm just breathing that in, and I feel like that really does exemplify, Nicole, the as within, so without mystery. So if you're watching this either live or on the replay, let us know if the reading that Nicole did for herself feels like it was speaking for you as well, right? We have these things that are like vibrational frequencies, and we each have one. And right now, we're also powerfully magnetic. That when people are in their actual embodied frequency of their soul and their being themselves, it resonates in a way that draws in people that have a vibrational match, and it's going to like repel people that are just there's nothing wrong with it, they just have a different vibrational frequency. So the more authentically you use your voice and express yourself and be you, the more you're going to draw in those people that are like, yes, me too, right? And people that are watching this right now, you're watching because you feel that resonance with us, right? You feel our energy and you're like, this feels good. This feels like it vibes with my vibe, even though we're all unique, we're all different. It doesn't feel dissonant and like, oh, that what they're saying, what they're being feels icky, right? And that's really what's happening a lot with groups of people right now in terms of this great divide energetically that's happening, all of the polarity. There's no middle ground anymore, it feels like. And people are either like, I'm over here and I'm singing this tune and vibing at this frequency, which is there's like one that's vibing, people are vibing high, they're being themselves, they're feeling really aligned. And there's also people that are just in judgment. Right? Like really doing that. And of course, you can bounce back and forth between the groups, but it just feels like that split is harmonic frequency resonance that's really pushing apart groups of people right now. Does that feel like it makes sense to you guys? It feels like the Trolls World Tour for any parents or people with small children in their lives. Trolls World Tour movie is a good one with Anna Kendrick and Justin Timberlake. And we talked about this last time. Movies, especially like the cartoons these days, have a lot of codes for people right now. But eventually what happened was they all decided that they could sing and dance together, even though they like different kinds of music and different kinds of vibrational frequencies. So there was a happy ending. I think we're heading there as well.
Love that movie. I just want to say, and yeah, sometimes it feels like that happy ending is so far away. And I think that's what I was feeling into earlier. I'm like, are we really ever going to get there? Is my leg just being pulled? But thanks, Trolls World Tour, for reminding me. And I know that Aurora also has the memory, which I don't have, but I have complete trust that we will get there. But sometimes when we're living through it, it feels like it's taking a long time. And so that's where we get to notice that thought and come back into alignment and choose to find that wonder again. Because that's just good information that we've kind of, we're getting off course.
What's coming up for me that I've heard Manifestation Babe actually talk about, she has a saying that's just don't judge it, just love it. And it came up for her during her medicine journeys in Costa Rica. And it's such a great reminder because in these times when things can be so triggering, activating, bringing things up for us, shining the light like on the shadow places where we might not like to look, or we might not like to for other people to see. That's what Scorpio season's all about, people. It is tempting sometimes to judge what comes up, what we're seeing, what we're feeling. And yeah, like remember, we're a human and we have these emotions, and these emotions are here to like serve a purpose, and that they're meant to move through us and meant to be felt. And in doing that, we can help to clear it. And rather than judging it and putting a label on it, like, oh, I'm feeling angry, and when I feel angry, it means this about me. Oh, I'm not supposed to feel angry. Anger is whatever stories we might make up about it. I'm a bad person if I feel anger, da, da, da. Rather than judging it, putting a label on it, writing a story about it, can we just love it and allow it to move through and process and metabolize and leave through the act of feeling it and the surrendering to it? It moves. If we're resisting it and judging it and pushing against it, it stays there, it festers. It might get pushed down temporarily, but it'll still be there. So don't judge it, just love it. Don't judge it, just love it. Just allow oneself to feel.
I'm just breathing that in too. I actually haven't heard her say that. I have a story I want to share because you guys are noticing, maybe you're not looking at me when I'm not talking, but I'm yawning and it's not energy clearing this time. That happens when we're belief repatterning. I'm yawning because my body is tired, though my mind is super, super clear. I had a steeped tea with caffeine at like 6 o'clock for trick or treating. And then I definitely had some of the chocolate from the candy tax that I was owed for taking my daughter out trick or treating. And I was very caffeinated. And so trying to go to bed at my normal, reasonable 10 o'clock time because my body was tired, but my eyes were just like wide open and I could not sleep. And I'm only now, while I'm talking to you and hearing these things about don't judge it, just love it, experiences, realizing that this was not how I would have reacted a few years ago, say 3 years ago and before that. If I had trouble sleeping, I would have gotten panicked, not at 10 o'clock, but once it was heading to like midnight, 1 o'clock, that sort of thing. And I would have told myself so many stories about, oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst. I'm going to have the worst day tomorrow. I'm going to be such a cow because I would turn into a raging, rhymes with itch, when I was tired. I felt like I couldn't show up like myself. And I like being a kind, compassionate, loving person, right? Like, but when I was tired in the past, I would be unable to regulate my nervous system and my emotions, and I would snap at people and be so mean. So, for the good of humanity, I tried to get as much sleep as possible. But sometimes that just wasn't possible. So, I did a bunch of repatterning when I learned how to do belief repatterning. And I actually love when I can't sleep now. I have no negative triggers to it at all. I'm like, okay, what is this the opening for? What space of possibility resides here? Because normally I can go to sleep quite easily, right? It was first off, oh, here's the lesson. You can't handle caffeine at 6 o'clock at night. You're not in college anymore, right? And oh, yeah, chocolate, that much chocolate late at night. Also, no bueno, like don't do that, but it's okay. I love you through it. You're so cute. It was Halloween. It was worth it. It was fine. And I went, okay, instead of laying in the dark with my eyes like wide open, I couldn't even close them. Could not even close my eyes. I go, I guess I'll just grab my computer and I'll do some writing. And I did some work on some, you know, sales pages and things like that, and emails that I needed to write. So it was productive and it was beautiful because it was this unexpected space of time. It was a gift, and the energy just flowed so perfectly as though it were supposed to happen. So instead of telling myself the story of like, oh my God, you're so stupid. How could you do that to yourself with the tea and the chocolate? And you should know better. It was just like, what a cool opportunity. I'm not going to do that again anytime soon, but look at the gift it gave me. I was able to, in the process of doing it, go, what is this doing for me? So I was in that space of understanding instead of judgment, right? And it actually was great. I got maybe 6 hours of sleep, which is fine, right? And now I'm yawning, I'm tired, but I'm still able to show up as myself. I just want to preface that I don't always live in the space of understanding. I had repatterned that. I had some explodies on the husband during the week, like I said earlier. So sometimes I have to go to the place of judgment and go, wait a sec, what is this? What is this highlighting for me? Okay, let me do the work to get to that space.
Yeah, we aren't always perfect. But it's so cool when you can look at yourself and see the shifts. And like I think that's the sign of healing, is having the same situation, the same circumstances happen again, and know that you're not reacting the way that you once did to it, because you're not in that automatic programmed state that you once were. So celebrating that, that's amazing. And yeah, I also have some regrets. My body feels super super dehydrated today, and it was like craving all the vegetables and green things because I indulged a lot on candy tax as well. um, that's okay. It's funny, I almost forget about the candy being part of Halloween because I'm all excited about the costumes, but my daughter does not forget that part.
I'm going to chime in and say that I had some of my niece's candy too, and was like wired pretty late. And so I was cleaning the bathroom. I was trying to like get into something productive. I was like, I should be going to bed. But for some reason, I'm cleaning the bathroom while I'm like brushing my teeth and washing my face. Like, okay, let's go for it. My bathroom's clean now. But yeah, it's so interesting. Like my body, as I'm guessing both of you, your bodies aren't as used to the sugar. And so, especially later at night. So it's like definitely it's just so we're so cute when we're human, and sometimes we do things that may not be entirely ideal or supportive in the moment, but then to rather than use that energy to get hard on ourselves and I shouldn't have done this and causing like the regret, stress, and all of that. It's like, okay, like the reality is I ate the candy bar late at night, and but getting frustrated and angry at myself wouldn't improve the situation. It's not going to change the past. It's not going to change the decision. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels like the word that's underneath all of this that allows us to go from that place of like judgment. And who here hasn't beat themselves up about decisions that we have made? Like, I don't do it anymore, but I have done it. I've been so rude to myself. So let us know if you've ever had that inner critic voice that was really rude, that spoke to you in a way that would ruin friendships if you were speaking it to another person. Yeah, I have been there. But my point was that underneath this understanding is the acceptance of what is, which is a lack of resistance, right? When we're in judgment, we're in the fight, the push against, the this should not be so kind of energy, which does nothing but put our hackles up, and then your nervous system's like, oh my gosh, it's an emergency, we better fight. And like it just spirals downwards from there. And when we're in that, it is what it is. Okay, we can calm the nervous system. We don't have to get ourselves into a tizzy, which just amplifies all of the negativity or whatever's going on, and especially that maybe inability to sleep in our particular circumstance and situation, right? It would just make it worse if you're freaking out about it. And it allows you to be at peace, be in acceptance, be understanding, and understanding that there is the potential for wonder, right? Like you can go out, and maybe some people were in the position that we were in last night with the candy and the caffeine, and they went out and maybe looked for a aurora borealis, or maybe they wrote an amazing novel, right? Like when we open instead of like resist, we can access the magic.
And being able to do that within ourselves first is how we're going to all get there as humanity, to where we're all trying to go. For anybody that's watching this, we have to master that within ourselves. And I love what Jason's saying is judgment equals victim mindset, and understanding equals peace and freedom. And yes, totally agree with that, Jason. I used to live in the victim mindset a lot, and I've cleared so much of it, and then there's still more that is showing up and ready to be cleared. But luckily, it's not driving me anymore the way that it once did. That understanding and finding that peace and freedom is such a beautiful, beautiful place to be and place to live. And what wants to come through? I'm just like dropping into the 0 point as I speak for some reason. I'm not sure why, just a little heart transmission is offering. And I suppose how we get into that place of understanding is through coming into the 0 point, coming back into your center, into your heart space, into that space of presence. And if you have that moment of like, oh, hey, I'm reacting this way. How can let's just take a pause for a second and come back into that center place, and that will give you that opportunity to choose how you want to continue going forward. And if you react, that's okay. But it's so important to be able to notice at some point, to have that moment of mindfulness, and then bring yourself into that awareness and choose something different. Because as I said earlier, we are creating our reality so fast now. And the more often we can come back into that point throughout the day, we have the opportunity to create that for the world, not just for ourselves, also for ourselves, but for the whole world too, because we're giving, putting that out energetically. But we're also, if we're doing that, we may also be giving people the awareness that's something that you can even do. Many people probably, are not super aware that they're not that you are not your emotions or your thoughts or your beliefs. You're the one that's witnessing them and the experiencer of them, the observer of them. And I remember once making a post, and it was like how to feel your feelings, like a step-by-step guide, and people were like, whoa, this is amazing. And I thought it was cool when I saw it, but I wasn't like, wow, this is like actually mind-blowing information for some people about how to feel your feelings. But I also have to remind myself that it's probably really only 5-ish years ago that I really learned how to have this deep emotional intimacy with my feelings, because of the book Emotional Intimacy. Through my ecstatic dance facilitator training, I really got to learn that the emotions and the feelings that I was experiencing weren't happening to me. They were just there as information, and they were giving me information and pointing me, like I did in that exercise, to what I'd rather experience instead. But at first we have to come into this practice of learning actually how to feel them. And for so many of us, there's a lot of feelings that were not safe to feel, because growing up, many emotions were not safe to feel in many households. So it's just such a beautiful practice to really get comfortable with feeling the whole spectrum of emotions and using those to guide you to what you'd rather have instead.
Yeah, and feeling them without the judgment attached. That's the thing. If you're feeling it, but then you're like, I shouldn't be feeling this, and you placing some kind of arbitrary restriction upon yourself, then you're not actually free to fully dive in. And it's really interesting because I too did not enjoy going deep into the emotions. I like to skim the surface of them. And it was when I also took ecstatic dance training and priestess work and started working with the elements about a decade ago, and learned about the beauty of the element of water and the emotional realm, that I started to feel like I could dive in without drowning. That was the piece that when I was younger, I was like, if I go there, like maybe I'll start crying and I will never stop. It's so overwhelming to imagine that process. But if we ever actually watch a child have a feeling like that, unrestricted, without interference, just while we're holding space, they do stop, right? The feelings get to be felt fully. It's like the storm, but then the storm passes and then there's this space, right? And I just want to suggest to people, if you're feeling like, if I go into that space, I'm going to drown and there's going to be no one there to catch me, maybe don't do it alone, right? Have someone hold you. There's beautiful beings like Trish Bowie, who's here on the live. I don't know if you're still here, Trish, but she was able to hold space for me during a beautiful Shambhala Reiki session. For me to go deeper into some like childhood feelings that I didn't let myself fully feel than I ever had in my life. Would I have gone there by myself? Absolutely not. No, I would not have dared to tread there, because sometimes we require somebody to literally hold that energetic space so we feel like we're able to be safe in the process. So if you feel like this is something you have to do alone, you can release that and understand that there are people who are boss at holding space for you to have feelings. That's something that is so profoundly helpful.
Yeah, remembering that we're not alone, we don't have to do it alone, and that there's support that's here and available to us. I actually just learned something, that when our body is having a stress response, oxytocin is released, and oxytocin is known as the cuddle hormone, and that it brings up, desire to be social and to support one another and to connect and to care. And so I thought that was really fascinating that, in that our bodies are wired in stressful situations to seek support and to also support one another. Like, we're wired to be these communal social beings. We're not meant to do any of this alone. So yeah, I thought that was really mind-blowing fact that I learned.
I think that, I mean, that must be like a historical thing through history, which I'm sure Aurora with her anthropology degree can talk about. But I know that there's something like we talk about self-care all the time, but especially during the pandemic, we're truly lacking community care and that support that we need from our, our community. I want to say tribe, but I try to avoid using that word. But that was the word that was coming to my mind. Um, our people, we need that support from other people, and that's one of the reasons why social media can be so like one of the many reasons why it can be so addictive is when you're scrolling and seeing familiar faces in your feed, it gives you that same like sense of security and safety as if you were back in like in camp with your your fellow people, and you see those safe people and it makes you feel supported and all of that stuff. So I am really holding the vision for this pandemic situation to be done soon, and so that we can go back to doing things without restrictions. There's an event in a couple weeks that's happening, and I'm going to it, but it's like it's been so much thought and like stress kind of almost has gone into like, should I go? Is it safe to go? Am I can I handle being around people, because I haven't been around people very much, and um I actually had to process a little bit. Most of the time I'm doing pretty good with like just accepting the state of the world as it is and like holding space and like just this is how it is right now, it won't be like this forever. But every so often there's some anger and annoyance that comes up that I actually have to allow myself to feel about it. Just be like, I'm so sick of this. I just want it to be like not back to normal, but not where it's, because I know it's not going back to normal, but I just want to be able to like, there's an event happening, okay, I'm going to go and just go do it without having to, consider if like, are people going to be vaccinated and have to get rapid tests first? And should I wear a mask the whole time I'm there? And like all those things that were not part of our reality before. So I'm going to hold space for the wonder to be present in that, and that we can, hold a retreat in 2022 and invite people to do that in an environment where it feels safe and easy and doesn't have all that heaviness of, at least that's my experience of it. It might not be like that for everybody, but I feel like most people are probably feeling something about the state of the world in that aspect.
I just want to ask you one more time, when you're really feeling into the like, is this safe? Is this okay? Like all of that, is that yours?
It's funny because my mind's always like yes, and then I tune into like what's in my body, and I'm like, oh, it feels like contraction and restriction, which tells me that it's not mine. Yeah. So, interesting. Apparently, there's a lot that I'm holding on to that is not mine lately. It feels. I wish I could put into words how it is that I feel lately. It's like reality shifting, and like it's this and then it's that, and like up and down and all over, and then I come back into my center and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you speak because I know you well enough to be able to tap into like that's not yours. Like I can feel it really clearly. And I'm curious, Nina, if when she's talking, you can kind of notice that it doesn't sound like Nicole when she is aligned and centered, because that You feel like you're so rooted and safe and secure when you are in your heart space, right? And decision making is easy. It flows. You just go, what is the right thing for me to do here? And it's like, boom, go or don't go. This is the Nicole that I know when you are in alignment, which is also what we were going to talk about today. Right. So we're just, thank you for the beautiful example. So when we are out of alignment, body, mind, heart, and soul, we're not on our axis. We're not connected with the earth. We're just like all like ziggity zaggity. Other people's thoughts, the collective beliefs, the energies, they will throw us off balance, and we don't know what's ours and what's not. And then we just feel like we're all spinny and swirly and going, I don't know. Right. But that's not what you feel like when you are in alignment. You are super pure, but like in the way that like a clear channel. So again, decision making is easy, speaking is easy. There's none of that back and forth wishy-washy stuff. Mm-hmm. So this is the invitation for all of us is to get in alignment so we don't have to go back. It feels like a dishwasher or like a washing machine, like, one of the ones that just swirls stuff around. And then we feel like we can't breathe. Right? We're just being banged around with all the other jackets and whatever's in there. So alignment is going to be a focus. It's going to be a theme for us in November and December. So this is actually a great time to mention on November 23rd, I think it will be, inside the Radiant Evolution Collective group, we are going to be doing a free workshop called Aligned AF. You know what that stands for, right? We're going to get super in alignment, body, heart, mind, and soul, anchored into the earth and just into our galactic origin points, so that we can consciously create and move forward into the month of December with more ease and grace. And we'll tell you more about what's going to be happening in December when we get closer there. But alignment is basically going to be essential. So if things are swirling for you, check in. Are you or aren't you? Right? And I know you were saying that you're having trouble being in that space, but yeah.
I just want to add, so that's really interesting that you brought that all up, because I can't remember what we were doing. I think it was in our playground. Event last week where we were channeling with Monica Ramirez, and what I was journaling was like the message to have more fun, and it's like, go to the event. I'm like, well, should I go to the event? Like, well, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Was the words that came through. And I'm like, yes, it would. And then I felt so good about it because I was in that super aligned state, channeling my high self. And I'm not exactly sure what shifted after that, but yeah, I was kind of in a funky state after that. And then I was like, all the like what ifs and what if this happens, and all the unaligned thoughts were coming through. And I'm like, oh, I don't know what shifted. I'm like, maybe I just don't want to go anymore. So that's a perfect example of, first of all, trusting yourself. Usually what you get, especially when you're like aligned AF, and when that first message comes through, that is usually the right thing, and definitely feels very different energetically to me. Probably you can even feel that as I'm speaking into it. And then, yeah, just super interesting to have this, because I didn't have this reflection, because I didn't, it wasn't all coming full circle until right now.
I'm curious, Nina, knowing Nicole as you know her, have you been able to just notice, or can you do it with me? Like when it sounds like me and not me, like, can you feel that? Can you feel that for others?
I think I'm not quite as sensitive to it, but now that you're mentioning it, I'm wandering into some other conversations I've had with friends lately. And yeah, there are certain things that I can think of where I've just had a sense that there's some sort of a game or program that the person is connected to that's not truly who they are. And one thing that I've noticed in relationships is I can often see what their potential is, and I can see ahead what they're like in a friendship or a relationship. I can see what's possible, and I'm holding that vision for them. And yeah, they might not be fully in that at that time. So it's almost as if I can have foresight and see what their like higher self is acting as. And then there's times when, you know, the person might not be, they might be in a space of not believing in themselves or having the doubt or holding themselves back. And then I'm like, oh, but that's like not the friend I know. So I guess in a way I can see that. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking out loud and processing out loud as you asked to answer that question. Super fascinating to consider.
Yeah. Well, I was just curious because it's something that is now one of my superpowers, but I've been spending, my years as a belief repatterning practitioner, noticing when something is a program, when something is an unsupportive belief versus a supportive belief, which is super helpful and winds up sometimes like the real-time coaching with friends, being able to be like, that's not actually you talking, right? It's fascinating. And we also have a beautiful friendship where we can call each other on that. And nobody's going to get offended by the suggestion that we are not like ourselves because we want to be ourselves. So it's like if I am saying something or not acting in alignment, like, call me on this, please. These two have expressed permission to call me on my stuff, call me on my BS, call me on acting out of alignment because I beyond anything else want to know so that I can get back into alignment, learn and grow. Right. And I actually have seen the gift so many times when in the past I've had friends and family who've been courageous enough to point out to me something that was unavailable for me to see at the time. And we're running a little bit over here for a normal hour-long segment. So I'm not going to get into those stories. I should tell them someday though. But if you can have the availability and the understanding and the compassionate people to be able to reflect to you when it doesn't sound like you, it's one of the most beautiful things you can receive and also give if you do it in a way that is kind and compassionate and understanding. Suze Casey, the developer of Belief Repatterning, does it in such a beautiful way. She just goes, that doesn't sound like the Aurora I know, or something to that effect, right? It's not like, you're not like yourself. What's wrong with you, right? It doesn't have to be like that. So that was part of that space holding that we were talking about. And what if this conversation here could give you permission to approach maybe some of those situations in your life when somebody that you love is very obviously not speaking from a place of alignment, but rather they're out of alignment, discombobulated, right? Reminding them can be enough to help them come back home to themselves.
Yeah, and that brings it back to, I love how you're looping it all, bringing it all together, because that brings me back to thinking about the understanding and the compassion. Like we can be that mirror for one another and to gently and lovingly say like, that's not the Nina I know. And also, having that, that zoomed out perspective, like you said, we're talking about the eagle, to have more understanding, like, wow, this person's probably acting this way in this moment because of the stress that they're experiencing. And that's not to say we shouldn't, expect respect in our relationships. And we still have a right to advocate for ourselves and to be assertive, which is something that I learned this week, but to help us be more understanding. Oh, they're going through something really hard right now. So it's not personal. They weren't taking it out on me intentionally. In fact, it was unconscious. It was a reaction, and it was, energy that had built up that, was the volcano. It's energy maybe that wasn't getting processed, or emotions that weren't being processed or felt. So having more compassion, and we're seeing those aspects of people coming through that's not truly who we know they are. They're not like that. That's not, they're not they may not be in alignment, or they may not be acting from their higher self. I know that I hope that people have compassion for me when I'm not I'm not always acting in alignment or from my higher self. And I like to think about this when I'm in traffic. Once in a while, I'll make a mistake, and people don't, most often I don't get like honked at or like angry people, but we're all human. We all make mistakes. So if someone accidentally, or I choose to see it as if someone is maybe like a little bit of they make a mistake in traffic, maybe they're like a jerk, rather than calling them a jerk, maybe rather than putting on that judgment or that label, or saying, oh, they intentionally did it. It's like, oh, well, maybe they just made a mistake like I make mistakes sometimes. And it helps me to be more compassionate in that moment. And then it doesn't spark anger or frustration or judgment on that. And I'm like, it's definitely taken some time and practice to, have that be more of a habitual response, or rather than going into the reaction. But it served me to have more compassion and understanding, and just, oh, we're all human. We all make mistakes sometimes. They weren't just being an a-hole on purpose.
We often try to remember that people are doing the best that they can given the circumstances and consciousness that they have available to them at the time. And it was hard for me to think of like the worst things that I've ever done, that I had judged myself as the worst things that I had ever done, and truly accept that I was in a really hard time, and it made sense that I acted that way, because but I did eventually. And once I could really learn to accept that, and the worst things that I think I did that caused harm to other people, I wasn't in a good place. And that doesn't make it, I'm not excusing my behavior, but I can understand why I did it and have compassion for myself, and also choose to do better and not do that again. And the more that we can do that to ourselves, for ourselves, then it's so much easier to bring it back in for other people. So I think traffic is also such a great example, because there's sometimes when I am driving still, and my immediate reaction is not nice words to other people. And I'm like, oh, I could do a little bit better there, or try to remember that for next time somebody cuts me off or does something silly.
Have you ever tried to sing your road rage? Have we talked about this? I think we might have chatted about this at one point, but sometimes, I mean, I wouldn't say it's road rage, but it's a great way to like process emotions while I'm driving. But if somebody cuts me off, I'd be like, you cut me off, like sing about it. Just sing about it, people. Move the energy through your voice. You can't shake while you're driving. Well, maybe you can a little bit, but not entirely. Or if it's like we're all sitting at four-way stops, and like the people that are supposed to be going before me aren't going, like, it's your turn, then my turn, and then it says like, I'll just make a song. Highly recommend it. It's fun. Makes you laugh.
It's actually a really great parenting technique. If your kid is driving, you go, I need you to pick up your shoes right now. And then they get all dramatic and sing it back to you if it's my kid, and just turns into a musical. And it diffuses the energy, and it's really powerful to transmute and alchemize things like that. But one thing I do know is that all that we're talking about, especially when it comes to traffic, is about giving people the benefit of the doubt, and instead of assuming the worst, assuming the best, or just telling a story that's going to feel more supportive. And I can't remember the actual psychological principle of this, but I did learn this in social psychology about 20 years ago. The principles that we are much more likely to make excuses or give people that we know or ourselves the benefit of the doubt. Whereas if we don't know them, if they're a stranger, we're more likely to just go, well, they're just an a-hole. Whereas if it was Nina, I'd be like, oh my gosh, well, either she's having a bad day, or maybe, like she's just, there's an emergency and she might need to just be driving really fast. And like, we will give the people around us more of that benefit of the doubt. And if people regularly and routinely give all of the drivers around them the benefit of the doubt, they're actually 50% happier as they're driving. Like 50%. If you just give people around you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, well, instead of him assuming he's an asshole, a-hole, whatever, sorry, Facebook, they're having a bad day. They need to get to the emergency room. They woke up late. And I mean, what is the harm? You're just telling yourself a story, right? And you don't know whether or not it's true, but one is going to make you feel good and expansive and benevolent and kind, and one is going to make you angry. So what stories do you want to tell yourself? I feel like that's really the sum of November, right? If we want to sum it up, what story do you want to tell yourself about what you're experiencing? Do you want to tell yourself the one about the judgment and all of those crunchy feelings? Or do you want to tell yourself the one that is going to give you the most understanding and compassion for self and others? And maybe even you can tap into the story of, oh my gosh, there's actually things that are happening for me here. And it can amplify that sense of wonder and give you the doorway into all of that magic. So you're telling the stories regardless. Why don't you choose the ones that make you feel more magical?
Mic drop.
I was literally about to say that. I love it.
I'd have to drop my webcam. I don't have an external mic, and then it just goes, ah.
Yeah, we can just pretend.
So next week we're going to be back, and we're going to be speaking about the power of voice to create. This is the perfect segue, because as we're telling stories, we're creating our reality, right? And we get to choose as conscious creators those stories that we tell ourselves. We're going to play a bit with frequency. I'm twisting these beautiful ladies' arms into doing some light language activations with me as well, because I do have another round of the Unlocking Your Soul Secrets with Light Language course coming up on November 11th. So we're going to play a little bit more in that field next week, time TBD. If you're watching this on YouTube, just be sure to like and subscribe. And you can, of course, share it with people who might need to hear this conversation about alignment. And it's like, how do you share this without sharing this to people? Literally just share it and be like, hey, I thought you might think this conversation was interesting, right? And you don't have to tell them, hey, you're being a judgmental person, and you could use a little more understanding and compassion in your life. Just share the conversation with them and don't say a word. Introduce it instead of making it about them, right? Don't tell them the story that's going to put their hackles up, right? Doing things with compassion, illumination. I love these chats. Thank you, everybody that has been with us this beautiful Monday, November 1st afternoon. Again, if you haven't seen the energy interpretation, go check that out on my YouTube or Facebook, and let us know what you think. How is November feeling to you? You feeling those possibilities, the wonder, the magic? We love you so much. Wishing you so much love, and we'll all talk soon.